Hello, welcome back to another video. Today we are doing another election analysis based on how my subscribers voted in a poll. This poll happened about a week ago. It's still ongoing. It has around 280 votes at this point, and it keeps rising. So if you want, you can still participate in all of the future elections. It's been a lot of fun so far. But we are going election by election, and we are showing how my subscribers' votes change history. And speaking of the history that we're going to be talking about today is 1928. This is the 1928 election. This is the election that elected Herbert Hoover. And if you know anything about the 20s and 30s, you probably have heard negative things about Hoover. A lot of people don't like him at all, blame him for the Great Depression, which of course had massive implications all over the world. One thing is definitely true. He was not hated right here. Look at this, 444 electoral votes, 58.1% of the vote. Look at this. Look, the Democrats lose. Virginia, North Carolina, Tennessee is gone. Freaking Texas is gone. It's just insane. And Florida is gone too, but Florida is gone by such a huge margin that it becomes a safe state. It's honestly impressive. Now, in this election, in the 1928 election, the Republicans were definitely at that advantage mainly because of riding high on economic prosperity at the time. Herbert Hoover promised continued growth, and that coming from a man in his party, a lot of people trusted that. But critics did warn of growing inequality and unchecked speculation. Now, the Democrats, they nominated a man called Al Smith, a Catholic and opponent of prohibition, which energized urban and immigrant voters. But he did have a problem alienating many rural and southern Protestants, just because of the fact that he was Catholic, to be honest. And Smith's progressive policies couldn't overcome widespread anti-Catholic sentiment in the country, cultural divides, and Hoover was able to take advantage of that. I mean, look at this just destroyed South here. And this is much more solid than 1924 when we pull that up. Okay, so here we have 1924 in real life. This is how it was in real life. And you can see it really did solidify. A lot of these red states are just getting more solid here. It's quite impressive. And even the state of Oklahoma, which was a very contentious state last time, is just not in the cards, at least in our timeline. They really rode off the back of that high economy and succeeded. There's just some interesting things here, though. First of all, you can see a little bit of blue up here. That's interesting. The Massachusetts got won by, I believe, about half a point. So very close. Same is true in Rhode Island. And you can see New York here is also very, very close to going Democrat. That might surprise a lot of you. It's mainly because this guy is from New York, so that obviously has an effect. Just like how in the last election, you can kind of tell where the progressives' home state is just based on which one is dark green. It's the same thing. It's going to be very interesting to see how you guys change this election. Just for a little context, this is 1924, as I was saying earlier, and this is your guys' version of 1924. Just a massive difference here. It's really was quite a fascinating map to display. But now we just don't really have to worry about that third-party progressive tearing up Republican votes. The main problem for the Democrats is going to be getting Texas, holding on to Texas, trying to make a break into the northern part of the South here, and trying to do better in these states. That's really their only chance of winning this election. And also the same is true for, of course, the Rust Belt. Now, if you don't know how I'm doing all this, it's kind of complicated. You can watch the first video, my 1924 video, and I go into a lot more depth about it. But basically, I'm just looking into each state, looking at their percentages in the state, seeing how that differed from the national average, and then grabbing that difference and adding it to the new national average that you guys voted on. So here is how you guys voted. As you can see, it's quite different from the actual numbers. You can see this is 58.1% for Republicans, 40%, basically 41% for the Democrats, and you guys voted 46.7% for the Democrats, so 47%, and only 53% for Herbert Hoover. I don't know why you guys voted for him. Most Americans hate him anyway, but that's besides the point. The fact is, he's gotten the majority here, but it is much less than his real-life victory of 58.1% of the popular vote. These changes in popular vote really make a huge difference, and that's really going to be what we're looking at today, is just going to be how much that difference is. Alright, so here is our empty template here. All of these electoral votes are the same. They did not change in the 4 years, so that is nice. You still have a total of 531 electors, so they have to get 266 to make a majority. Now, let's start off the night with safe states going from west to east. Alright, safe states include the state of Washington, the state of Oregon, the state of California, the state of Idaho, the state of Wyoming, the state of Colorado, the state of Nebraska, the state of Oklahoma, the state of Kansas, the state of Michigan, the state of Ohio, the state of Pennsylvania, the state of Delaware, the state of Vermont, the state of Maine, the state of Arkansas, the state of Louisiana, the state of Mississippi, the state of Georgia, and the state of South Carolina. And that is it. That is all the safe states for this election. And as you can see, in the real election, we have just so many more safe states here. So you're already seeing some sort of change in just the drop-off of support for Republicans just based off these small percentages that have changed in the poll. You now have a lot less safe states compared to before. And the same cannot be said for the Democrats. They actually gained the safe state of Georgia. So if our safe states counted towards the electoral vote totals, we're looking at 54 votes for the Democrat and 156 for Hoover already. I know people who hate Hoover are very angry right now. But again, there's still a chance for the Democrats to win this election, and there's still a chance to just absolutely humiliate Hoover here. Again, just look at his victory, 444, and look how many safe states. I believe with all of these safe states counted at the start, he would already be well above 200. So this is a much more scary position for Hoover. But that's it for safe states, like I said before. Now we're going to move on to states in this section of the United States, and we're going to go through them from strongest to the very, very, very tightest battles. Now, in this gigantic section of the United States, there actually is only 4 states that are in the likely category, which is 15 through 5-point advantage in the vote percentage, which might be surprising to you guys. But that state is Montana, a grab for the Republicans. South Dakota, another Republican grab. The state of New Mexico, another grab for the Republicans. And finally, the state of Arizona, another grab for the Republicans. This is pretty sucky if you're a Democrat, but not a lot of this is unexpected. There is actually a lot of fighting up here in the Dakotas, interestingly enough, and also in New Mexico, just because of its relation to the South here. But you just can't fight with that Republican hold. I mean, look at Oklahoma. That's a solid state now, when before it was a likely Republican state, or sorry, a likely Democrat state, which again means 15 through 5 points. And now it's a solid red state. The Republicans just had so much support here from the economy that really this makes sense. But a couple of interesting facts about these likely states. In the end here, after our additions and changes because of this community poll, Montana ends up with a +7 percentage point difference for Republicans, so a pretty nice hold. This is because in the state, the Republicans got the actual same amount as the national average, which is 58%. That was their national percentage for this election. And Democrats suffered, but only by 1 point. Democrats fought here, but they lost by 1 point. Compared to the national average, they got only 40%. So that hurts them even afterwards. Dems end up at 46% and Republicans at 53%. It's a very similar story in New Mexico. You're looking at actual hold for Democrats. They get their national average of 41%, but a 1 point gain for Republicans to 59%, which puts them at +7 for the Republicans as well. And in Arizona, it's pretty much the same story again, but a little bit harder for the Republicans to grab this. It ends up with a +5, so they're just on the edge to being a lean state, but still a Republican victory nonetheless. Now, these next two, Nevada and Utah, are both going to be lean states. These are the, like I just said, less than 5 states. These are states that are, well, I guess what you would call swing states. These are the ones that swing from side to side each year and cause a lot of trouble for parties depending on which way they swing. But you can see in the 1924 election, they were both solidly Republican, this one more so, and Nevada more on the edge. It was actually fighting for influence with the progressives. The progressives almost won here. But both Republican holds, and in the actual 1928 election, they both did see some support loss, but still held in the likely column for Republicans. Now, in this universe, in this community poll subscriber election 100 years later, we are looking at Nevada losing more popularity with the Republicans, but still actually holding. They make it through with 52% of the vote, and the Democrats are just behind them at 49%. This is simply just because the Democrats overperformed by just 2 points compared to the national average, and Republicans lost 1 point of support. Such a little difference can make this state almost flip. Now, it is actually, interestingly, a very different story in Utah. What happened in Utah in this election is that in real life, the Republicans suffered a much bigger loss of support here compared to Nevada. Interestingly enough, they were 4 below the national average. Their national average was 58. They're here at 54%, to the Democrats 46%, which seems like a very big difference. But with the Democrats just holding a higher percentage of the vote in this community poll, that +5 overperformance for the Democrats from 41% to 46% actually makes this a very surprising Democratic lean state. I know, a very weird spot of blue in our map, but very interesting, and may show what is to come over in this region, and maybe a Democratic victory over here. It would be very fascinating to see that. But this is certainly early on in the night. We don't know what's going to happen. I just thought I would show that off. But yeah, very interesting for the Democrats here. Now, there's one state left in this block I want to talk about. Texas is going to be included in this southern block, and that's going to be the state of North Dakota. North Dakota last election almost was won by the progressives, interestingly enough. They have a history, it seems, of fighting the incumbent here. And the same is true in 1928. You can see they were a likely Republican state, kind of a pimple in the middle of this dark red wall here. But it is very interesting to say that this is even closer than these elections. These last elections these were both 3-point elections, which means 3%. That is a very small number. But this state I actually had to use decimals to figure out. So in real life, the Democrats got 44.46% of the vote, and Republicans got 54.80% of the vote. So 10% above the Dems here. But what is interesting is that the Dems were able to get 44.46. That's plus 3.56 above the national average there. And for Republicans, that 54.8% shows a hurt to their percentage, minus 3.3 compared to our national percentage. And after a bit of math here, I have the Republicans at 50.0% of the vote after adjustment, and Dems at 50.26% of the vote. This is a Democrat tilt state, less than 1 point. This state was won by 0.26 points. Reminds me of Georgia in the 2020 election, or Wisconsin in the 2024 election. These super close states. But it's interesting, again, to see another blue hold, a blue steal rather, in this kind of safe territory of the country. It's very interesting to me, and we'll see how that plays out throughout the rest of the night. But that concludes this western block. Now we're going to move on to the southern block. Alrighty, now it is time to go to the southern block. That's going to be Texas all the way up to Virginia. And we're going to start off, of course, with likely states. The first likely state I have for you on the map is going to be the state of Alabama. And that's actually going to be a Democrat likely state. Now you can see in the actual 1928 election, this was a lean state. This was very close to actually being flipped by the Republicans and splitting the South even more in half. But in this, just because of this vote changing, it gets to stay as a likely state. Now, weirdly enough, the next likely state is going to be the state of Florida. The state of Florida is going to be a likely state for the Republicans, a Republican grab in the deep South. Even I, as a Floridian, don't really know how this happened. I know the parties kind of switched back then, so it seems like we should be a pretty strong Democrat state. But as you can see in the actual results, this was a safe state. This was a safe state, and in our poll, our change has made it just a likely state. So I guess that's still a victory in and of itself. But still, Florida is lost. Now, out of this bunch, the last likely state is going to be the state of Texas. This was a big humiliation for Democrats on election night. You can see in real life they lost the state of Texas to the Republicans. Nowadays, of course, Texas is a Republican state, but you know that's a whole thing. This was so shocking. I mean, look in 1924. Look 4 years later. 1924. 4 years later. Look at that being destroyed. And Florida as well. And look at all the rest of these states. Virginia, South Carolina, North Carolina, all of these just getting wiped off the map in real life. So this is a pretty nice comeback for Democrats. It really shows you the difference that this poll has made. And it may be indicative of a wider southern push. Well, we'll have to see. But let's get into these just a little bit. Alabama gets to survive just because it has plus 10 in Democrat support compared to the rest of the nation, and minus 9 in Republican support. It's able to squeak itself out. Now, in Florida's case, in real life, you're looking at a 40% for the Democrats and 57% for Republicans, so a plus 17, which is, of course, a safe state and, of course, very strong. And that's just because both parties were kind of right at the national average. Both parties were down just 1 point from their national average, that being 41% for Dems and 58% for Republicans. And after our poll changes things, we're looking at 46% for Democrats and 52% for Republicans. So we're able to close that gap, but just not close enough. But still, it's very interesting to see that on the map. The last state, of course, is Texas. Now, in real life, the Democrats did do well here. They got 7 above the national average, and the Republicans did quite bad here. They were 6 points below the national average. But the thing that changed this is just that Republicans were so used to being so much lower compared to their national average than just -6. That -6 actually was enough for them to take the state. Again, just barely, but take the state. But in this world, we're looking at a 47% for Republicans and a 54% for the Democrats. So not only is this a slight win, it's a likely win. It's a strong win for the South. Now, that's it for likely states. We do have some more contentious ones in here. Now, there are 3 states left in this block. One of them is, again, a very, very, very tight race, and the other 2 are going to be classified as lean states. And those 2 are going to be Tennessee and Virginia. Now, in Tennessee, after our polling, the Republicans are placed in at 49% and the Democrats at 52%. They are able to keep the state of Tennessee. You can see in 1924 they were able to grab it. In real life, 1928, they were just destroyed here. It became not only a win state, but it became a likely state for the Republicans. Very shocking there. But they were able to hold on to it in this election. And the same is actually going to be true for the state of Virginia. The state of Virginia comes in at the exact same, to be honest. It's pretty much the exact same margin, 49% for Republicans and 52% for the Democrats. But it is interesting to see that North Carolina, a state to the south, is more contentious to Virginia compared to Virginia, a state to the north. That's just kind of how these states are. A lot of these states are flop-sided. Like this, Alabama, you think would probably be quite conservative, but it's not nearly as conservative as South Carolina, which is still at like 98%, 97% this election. Now, the last state here is going to be the state of North Carolina. The Republicans and the Democrats are fighting fiercely over this. You can see in real life, the Dems got 45% of the vote, and Republicans got 55% of the vote. The Republicans beat them by 10%. 10%. Again, switching them to a likely state, a brutal victory. Something that might be a saving grace for Democrats here is the fact that 55% is 3 points below their national average of 58%. We will have to see. But looking at the numbers, I'm looking at Republicans at 50% of the vote and Democrats at 51% of the vote. This is another Democrat hold. A very, very close hold, 1 point hold. This is a tilt state for the Democrats. And if you're the Democrats right now, you're probably feeling much better than the Democrats were in real life. I mean, just look at this difference. Look at what my subs have done to history here. It's very impressive. And with this block kind of sorted out, 2 blocks done, we're going to update these electoral votes and show you how it's looking now. As you can see, with all of these votes tallied up, the Democrats rise to a very high number compared to last time. Vote count of 129 electoral votes. And Hoover just gains about 30. Now he is at 180 electoral votes. The distance is closing. Now, if you look at how many electoral votes the Democrats got in real life, you can see we are already above that, and there is still a lot of ground to cover. They had 87 votes, that's it, and now they're at 129. That is the effect that this poll had. But it's very interesting. Next up, we are going to jump into the East Coast. We're going to finish all of these states and then end up in the north central United States to end the election. Alrighty, so now we are going to do the East Coast region. That's going to be from West Virginia all the way to the state of New Hampshire. And we're going to start off with likely states, of course. For this part of it, let's look back at the real life results. You can see very interesting things here. Like I said before, New York is on the cusp. Just because this guy is from New York, I believe, is a main part of it. But also some states over here actually flipped. You have Massachusetts flipping, you have Rhode Island flipping, and you have Connecticut getting some damage done here. And the same is true of Maryland. Maryland getting hurt quite badly here and becoming a likely state. So it's very interesting. We'll have to see how that changes. Alrighty, so the first state in the likely column is going to be the state of New Jersey. After our additions from the mod, we end up with Dems at 46% and Republicans at 55%. So New Jersey comes in as a +9 likely state. Again, it's not hard to just look at the difference here. You can, again, just see the difference from a safe state to a +9 likely state. So almost in that lean category. Next up, like in the likely column, is going to be the state of New Hampshire. And the state of New Hampshire is also going to be a grab for the Republicans, or a hold rather. And then I also have the state of West Virginia. Is this Eastern Bloc or Central Bloc? I don't know, but I'm going to count it as Eastern this time. West Virginia comes out like this. The Dems come in at 47% and the Republicans at 53%, making this just a +6 for Hoover. Remember, this is the election Hoover does great in. West Virginia comes in at just +6, right next to that lean category. Now there are 2 more states that are in this block that are likely. Again, I'm going to flip. This is the real one. This is the new one. This is the real one. This is the new one. Can you kind of see where these are going to be? I think you probably can. Now there are 3 likely states left out of all of these. The rest of them are going to be quite a bit more contentious, but you can probably guess if you just look at the real life map and this map, look at how it went from 1924 to 1928. You can probably tell where this is going, but we're just going to dive right in. The first likely state I'm going to talk about is going to be the state of Rhode Island. This was one of the closest of the night, with I believe just under a point awarding it to the Democrats. Very, very close. And the same is just not true in this election. They have a lot more ground, the Democrats. They're able to get in a lot more voters. And as you can probably tell from this map, the same is going to be true for the state of Massachusetts. Massachusetts comes in as another likely Democrat state. And they come in just a point above Rhode Island at +12. Dems at 56 and Republicans at 44% here. Now for the last likely state, this is going to be a big, strong state here. This is very important for both sides. You have the state of New York. Now, New York is even a battleground in the first place. Well, firstly because of these rural areas in the north and the west here, but also because the Democrat candidate happens to be from New York. I believe he was governor of New York. I'm not quite sure on that. But all in all, it comes in to be quite a big fight here. In real life, it was just 47% to 50%. The Republicans only won New York by 3 points, which is quite insane. Such a close battle for New York State. It's quite hard to imagine. But after changes here, Republicans come in with 45% of the vote after the math is done, and Democrats at 53%. That's right, they get to take the state of New York. Very impressive. Very impressive. This really shows his hold here in New England. It's quite impressive here. They actually almost got New Hampshire as well. That would have been even more impressive, but still, seeing blue like this far away from the usual blue hold, and the same is true for these states as well, is very scary for Republicans, I'm sure. Maryland is going to be the next state we talk about. In real life, it was not a very close battle. It was Dems at 42% and Republicans at 57%. But it did show a slight crack. That's Republicans coming in at just 1% less than the national average. It shows there's something there. But after all of our changes, it comes up to 48% for the Dems and 52% for Republicans here. A much, much closer battle, but still a win for Republicans. But you're going to see Maryland fall into the lean column this time. Now, lastly in our block here is going to be the state of Connecticut. I kind of skipped over it. That's just because it is one of those very close states. I know it doesn't look like it just because it's in a pretty solid area, but it is one of those closer states. This is another lean state. In real life, it looked like this. 46% for the Democrats and 54% for Republicans. A Republican grab here. You can see that in the map as well. C is kind of standing out here compared to all the rest. But you do see, again, the Dems at 46%. That's a +5 compared to the national average of 41%. That's a +5. So there was quite a strong turnout here of Democrats. And after adjustment and after looking at our community poll, the state is flipped. You're looking at Dems at 52% and Republicans at 49%, making this a +3 lean state for the Democrats. Alrighty, so like I said, that's the end of our block. There's only one block left. It's this final block. It's going to decide the election. You can look at the votes here, and he's been slowly gaining on Hoover all night, but now Al Smith is at 204. He's only 10 points behind Herbert Hoover. Again, the man who won 444 electoral votes. That is how much you guys have changed this election. It's really impressive. It's really neck and neck, much more than last video. And I'm very excited to see what happens here. Anything could really happen. There's a lot going on in this block. But with that, let's get into it. Let's finish this thing. Alrighty, so here we are. We're on the last block of the election. Quite nerve-wracking for probably both sides. There is potential for both sides to win here, just based on the percentages you guys voted for. And how the poll went, it could really go either way though. But we will probably see very quickly which way it is leaning. Now, all the safe states are already in, of course we did that at the beginning, so we're going to start off with likely states. And most of these are likely states. There are some that are more contentious, but most of them are likely, so we're just going to list them off by level of importance. The first likely state is going to be the state of Minnesota, and that is going to be a hold for the Republicans. So another Republican grab, unfortunate for the Democrats, but we'll see where things go. This has the least electoral votes out of all of these states. Next up is going to be the state of Iowa, and that is also going to be a Republican hold. I'm sorry, guys. Hoover is trying to claw his way out of this one. Next up is in level of importance is going to be the state of Kentucky. Kentucky is a likely state as well, and it's also going to be a state for the Republicans. And our last likely state, and the one that has the most significance out of all of them, is going to be the state of Indiana. And again, that is going to be a likely state for the Republicans. So with that, it's over. There is no longer a way that the Democrat can get 266 electoral votes. I'm sorry, Hoover's going to be in the White House. He's going to have a much slimmer majority, though. Again, look at this. Just wow. Look at that difference. And you could kind of probably see this coming if you paid attention to this map when I did show it, because look, these are all solid red. And these are the ones that have a little bit of leeway, which is why we have not covered them yet. They are the last states of the election. These are the ones that it will come down to, not in terms of getting a win for the Democrat. That opportunity has passed, but in terms of just strengthening his score, there are opportunities here. But yeah, these are not likely states. They are not safe states. We are moving to the lean category. Now, the only lean state out of these three is going to be the state of Illinois. It also happens to have the most electoral votes out of all of these. Let's look at the election in real life. In real life, we were looking at Dems at 42% and Republicans at 57%, a very common number, it seems, in this election. And again, that is going to be +1 compared to the national average for the Dems and a -1 for the Republicans. But we will see how it plays out here. After plugging everything in, I'm looking at the Dems at 48% and the Republicans at 52%. This is going to be a Republican lean state, but only by a margin of 4, which is quite impressive considering that this was in the margin of 5 to 15 before, and the election before that, it was a solid Republican state. So actually, in these elections, we've seen it crumble. 1, 2, 3. Look at that crumble. And if this was real life, you'd probably see this flip to Dems in the next election, but I'm not really sure how that will go. Oh, it is 1932, actually. It probably most likely will. That involves FDR. But that is the only likely state. It's a nice boost to Hoover's score here. Hurt for Al Smith here, but it is nice that he got quite close, only within 4 points. Very contentious here. Now, the next state is the state of Wisconsin. That is what we were going to talk about next. If you look, Wisconsin has a very interesting history here. It is an outlier in this election. It most certainly is an outlier in this election. And in this election, it might be similar, although the margins are not great for the Dems. We're looking at Dems at 44% and Republicans leading them by 10 points with 54% of the vote. But interestingly, this is a malice and a strength. It's a malice for the Republicans. Again, 54 is much below their 57 average, or 58 average, sorry. And for the Dems, 44% is a good bit above their 41% average. So everything is very, very close here. Again, we're at the very end of this. We're in tilt territory. And in the end, this looks like for Republicans, we have 49% of the vote. And for Democrats, we have 50% of the vote. Wisconsin is grabbed by the Democrats by less than 1 point. Very, very impressive. Nice little addition to his assorted collection of states. These are all very non-connected, which is funny. But a nice win, a nice way to soften the blow of losing the election, just getting that ever bit closer. And now we only have one state left to talk about, and that is going to be the state of Missouri. Alrighty, we are ending off this election with, of course, one more tilt state. Missouri is quite a similar story compared to Wisconsin. In real life, we're looking at Dems at 44% and Republicans at 56%, behind by 10 points at least. And as we've seen, you're able to turn that around in this election because of the way you guys voted. So let's see how it goes. Alrighty, so looking at the results, I see Dems with 50% of the vote and Republicans with 51% of the vote, just barely grabbing Missouri from the Democrats and ending this election with a very cheery moment for them, a very close but very nice victory. And it was certainly stressful in the beginning in this election, but in the end they were able to get there just much, much harder than in real life. Look at this difference. Look at this change. You have the flipping of Utah. You have the flipping of North Dakota. You have the flipping of Wisconsin. You have the flipping of New York. And of course the flipping of Texas. The flipping of Tennessee. The flipping of North Carolina and Virginia. A lot of action for the Democrats tonight. A very close election. A very interesting one. Let's count up the final tallies. Alright, so here we are. The final results are tallied in, and we end off the night with 217 electoral votes for the Democrats here. 46.3% of the popular vote, and the Republicans coming in at just 314 electoral votes and only 53.7% of the popular vote. Now again, compare this to real life. You're seeing only about a difference of 5% on the popular vote, but look at how much that's changed things. The Democrats were able to do a very solid job in New England. They were able to pick up a lot of states in the South. Not only the South, they were also able to pick up states in the West and the North. And unfortunately for this last huge block here, they were only able to flip Wisconsin, but still coming out at 217 electoral votes, when in real life they came out of this election with just 87, is honestly awesome. And this is definitely the more fun of the two elections that I've done so far. It's really cool to see how you guys have gotten so close. You guys were so close to getting rid of Hoover here. It's pretty freaking cool. I'm excited to see what you guys do for the next elections. Again, if you want to vote in them, I will have it in the description and in the pinned comment. You'll just hop on the link and just make your selections and then submit. I don't get to see anything about what you picked or anything about you. It's completely anonymous, and you get to help me with this content. Next up is going to be the 4 FDR elections. We're going to see if he can be unseated by 1944. I'm sure he'll be very popular in the first couple elections. And then we will get to 1944, and maybe he will be shit out of luck. We'll have to see. But those will be all put into one video, because I'm sure I'll just be able to go a lot quicker with them until we get to the more contentious ones. That's what you have to expect. This was a very exciting election. Again, we have 217 versus 314 compared to 444 versus 87. Just absolutely marvelous, and this is a beautiful map as well. If you have any suggestions, anything I can do better on these videos, please let me know in the comments. That's about it. See ya.